You never forget the first time a touch stops feeling innocent. Not because it hurt, not because it was wrong in that exact moment, but because something in your body recognizes a shift before your brain even catches up. Mine did. I froze. But not out of fear. Not out of shame. I froze because a part of me had already noticed him. Noticed the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Noticed how he lingered in the hallway a little longer than necessary. Noticed how he always offered to help, how his voice softened around me in a way it didn't with others. And that day, it was just a headache. A regular, stupid migraine from lack of sleep and too many things on my plate. I didn't even ask. He offered, "Do you want me to rub your shoulders for a bit?" I watched a video online. I could try. I smiled. Not because I needed the massage, but because someone had noticed that I was tired. Someone saw me. I should have said no. Maybe. I don't even know anymore. But I nodded, sat on the couch, closed my eyes, and then I felt it. His hands were shaking. Not lightly. Not the way hands tremble from nerves before a presentation or a cold morning. This was something else. His fingers brushed the back of my neck, and I swear every hair on my body stood up. It was quiet. No TV. No music. Just our breaths. His hands. My thoughts. And in that silence, something cracked. Not loudly. Not all at once. But enough. Enough to make me question whether I was really as numb as I'd convinced myself I was. Enough to remind me what it felt like to be touched with care. And that was the beginning. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because some stories aren't meant to be shouted. They're meant to be whispered in the dark and felt in the places we don't talk about. I'm in my late 30s. Second marriage. 2 stepkids I've tried my best to love like my own. And a house that looks perfect from the outside. Trimmed hedges, neutral paint, that little welcome mat we picked out on sale. But inside, it's quiet in all the wrong ways. My husband, he's not cruel. He's just not there. Always working, always tired, always somewhere else. Sometimes he touches me like it's a routine. A task. Like checking if the stove was off. We don't fight. But we don't laugh much either. It's like we stopped being curious about each other. We just manage things now. Bills, groceries, birthdays, silence. Then there's Jordan. My husband's nephew, 22, came to stay with us after some fallout with his mom. I didn't ask for details. He didn't offer them. He's quiet, polite, helpful in the kind of way that feels intentional. He doesn't move through the house like a guest. He moves like someone trying not to take up space. Like someone used to being overlooked. But he noticed things. Little things. He'd fix the squeaky cupboard without being asked. Refill the water jug before it was empty. Bring in the laundry if it looked like rain. And me. He noticed me. He'd ask how I was doing, and he'd wait for the answer. He remembered when I had my headaches. He remembered which tea I drank at night. He'd sit across the table during dinner and look me in the eye when I spoke, like what I said mattered. It wasn't attraction. Not then. It was being seen, being witnessed. There's a difference between someone being in the room with you and someone actually noticing you're in it. Jordan noticed, long before I ever admitted it to myself. He'd knock gently on the door, ask if I needed anything. Sometimes just stand in the doorway, hands in his pockets, like he had something to say but wasn't sure if he should. And I'd just nod, because I didn't trust myself to ask him to stay. I'd sit in my room, low lamp on, wrapped in an old sweater I wore too often. And I'd read the same lines in my book over and over again without turning the page. Because sometimes the quiet of that room was easier than the quiet between me and my husband. And sometimes, Jordan's presence outside that door felt louder than anything inside it. I didn't plan any of it. I didn't invite it. But the heart notices things before the mind catches up. And something in mine was already turning toward him. It started with a migraine. One of those that builds behind your eyes like a storm waiting to break. The kind that makes light feel like punishment and sound feel like betrayal. I'd had them for years. They show up quietly and steal the rest of your day. My husband usually just sighs when I tell him. He'll hand me a pill, tell me to lie down, and move on like it's nothing. But that afternoon, it wasn't my husband who noticed. It was Jordan. I must have winced while reaching for something in the kitchen. He was standing by the sink, drying a plate. He didn't say anything right away. Just watched me, his brow furrowed, towel still in his hand. A minute passed. Maybe 2. Then he said it. Softly. If you want, I could try rubbing your neck, just to help a bit. I saw something online about pressure points for migraines. I hesitated. Not because I thought it was wrong, but because I hadn't heard an offer like that in a long time. Not one without strings. Not one that felt like it came from care. I nodded. We went into the living room. No TV. No distractions. Just the late afternoon light slipping through the curtains, soft, golden, too gentle for the tension I felt inside. I sat on the edge of the couch, pulled my hair to one side, and he stepped behind me. I could feel him exhale before he touched me, could almost hear his heartbeat in the silence between us. His fingers found the base of my neck, tentative. And that's when I noticed. His hands were shaking. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. A tremble under the surface. A kind of fear. Or maybe restraint. And yet, he didn't stop. Neither did I. He pressed gently into my shoulders, his thumbs tracing circles along the tightest parts. I closed my eyes. Not because of the pain, but because the way he touched me felt different. Not sexual. Not clinical. Just aware. It was like every nerve in my back had woken up from sleep. And the room was quiet in a way that felt full. Like every breath between us carried something unspoken. I could feel it, his hesitation, his effort, his attention. It wasn't the massage that caught me off guard. It was the way it made me feel human again. I should have said something, should have thanked him and gotten up. Should have reminded him I was his uncle's wife. Should have reminded myself. But I didn't. I sat there, still, sinking into something I didn't want to name yet. And when he pulled his hands away, slowly, carefully, there was this long pause. I didn't turn around. He didn't speak. He just stood there for a second. Then walked out of the room. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I felt guilty. Not because I felt ashamed. But because for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt alive. The next morning, I told myself it was just a massage. Nothing more. He was being kind. That's all. He saw I was in pain and wanted to help. There was no reason to feel guilty. No reason to read too much into it. But then, why couldn't I stop replaying it in my head? The way his hands moved. The silence. The way he stood there for a second too long after. The way I didn't want him to leave. I went about my day, trying to forget. But everything felt different. The air felt heavier. The walls, tighter. And every time I walked past him, something in me braced, not out of fear, but anticipation. I started paying more attention. To my clothes. To how I looked when I walked into the kitchen in the morning. I told myself I wasn't doing it for him. But deep down I knew. I started lingering in the living room longer after dinner. Sitting at the table a little later. Reading on the couch instead of in my room. And he noticed. He didn't say anything, but he'd always find a reason to pass by. To sit nearby. To ask small questions that didn't really need answers. I hated myself for feeling something. But I also hated how empty my husband had left me. How invisible I had felt for so long. How I could sit beside him, talk to him, touch him. And still feel 1,000 miles away. And then Jordan comes along. Quiet. Careful. Seeing things I thought no one ever noticed. In that space. He felt like a mirror. A reflection of everything I had buried. Everything I pretended not to need. And that terrified me. Because mirrors don't lie. And this one was showing me a version of myself I didn't want to meet. There was no plan, no seduction, no late-night fantasies. But there was energy, tension. This constant undercurrent pulling me in and warning me away all at once. One minute I'd tell myself it was innocent. The next I'd catch myself hoping he'd come home early, hoping he'd walk into the room, hoping for a glance, a word, a reason. I started sleeping with the bedroom light on, not because I was scared, but because the darkness made it easier to imagine things. And yet I never crossed the line. Not physically. Not yet. But in my thoughts, in the soft, unspoken places of my mind. I had already gone further than I wanted to admit. Desire. It's quiet at first. It doesn't kick the door down. It seeps in through the cracks. And by the time you notice it, it's already rearranged the furniture. I was drowning in questions I couldn't answer. What kind of woman feels something for the boy her husband helped raise? What kind of woman lets herself be seen this way? What kind of woman forgets where the boundaries used to be? But every time I looked at Jordan, I didn't feel like a bad person. I just felt human. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was little things. Another headache. Another offer. Another soft press of his fingers into the base of my neck. I said yes too easily. Like I was waiting for it. Maybe I was. And he got better at it. At the massages. At the silence. At reading me. He never pushed. Never crossed the line. But he hovered near it, close enough for me to feel it humming beneath my skin. The sessions grew longer. The touches slower. His hands more steady, but his breathing? Still uneven. Still careful. We didn't speak during those moments. Words would have made it too real. So we let the silence stretch, like a thread neither of us wanted to snap. One night, he reached for the blanket folded at the edge of the couch. I reached at the same time. Our hands touched. Just lightly. But neither of us moved. We just stared at our fingers, locked for a second too long. Then slowly, deliberately, I pulled away. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But my chest stayed tight for hours after. Another night, I was in the kitchen, rinsing a cup. I looked up, and there he was, leaning against the doorway, watching me. Not in a creepy way. Not even in a bold way. Just observing. Soft. Still. Present. And I didn't scold him. Didn't ask what he was doing. Didn't tell him to stop. I just kept washing the cup. Because a part of me liked it. A part of me needed it. And I hated how much I did. Every time he touched me, it was like I existed again. Not as a mom. Not as someone's wife. Just as me. I'd forgotten what that felt like. To be wanted without being asked for anything. To be noticed without having to beg for it. But I started questioning myself. Was it real? Was he feeling the same pull, or was I imagining it? Was it attention? Or was it loneliness wearing a prettier face? I didn't have answers. I only had moments. Stolen, silent moments that burned too long in the memory. I became addicted. Not to his body, but to the way he made me feel when no one else was looking. I found myself waiting for him to come home, listening for his footsteps, holding my breath when he walked past, just in case he stopped. And when he didn't, I felt it like a hollow ache. I was drifting not toward him, exactly, but away from everything else. From the routine, from the numbness, from the woman I had forced myself to become. Then one evening, the house was quiet. My husband was away for work. The kids were in bed. The hallway lights were dim. I'd just stepped out of the shower, hair wet, towel draped over my shoulders, robe clinging to my skin. I was heading to my room. I turned the handle and realized the door wasn't locked. My husband had left for a 3-day conference. He kissed my cheek at the door, barely. Told me not to forget the bins. Didn't ask if I'd be okay alone. Didn't notice the headache behind my smile. The house felt too still after he left. Not peaceful. Just vacant. By evening, the migraine had started again. Dull at first, then sharper, pulsing through my temples like a warning. I tried to manage it. Took 2 pills. Turned off the lights. Laid on the couch, hoping for sleep. That's when I heard the knock. Soft. Tentative. Then his voice. "You okay?" I opened my eyes slowly. Jordan stood in the doorway, barefoot, hands tucked into the sleeves of his hoodie. "I saw you holding your head earlier," he said. "You want me to help again?" I could have said no. I could have lied and said it was going away. But I didn't. I just nodded. He walked in quietly, closed the door gently behind him. The room was dim, just one lamp in the corner, casting a soft amber glow. It lit only half of my face, half of his. I sat forward on the couch, pulled my hair up, closed my eyes. His hands settled on my shoulders. Warm, familiar, careful. At first, it was like before. Small circles, light pressure. Then his hands moved lower, to the base of my neck, then just below my shoulder blades, then just above the curve of my back, and then just a little lower. My breath caught. Not loud, just enough that I felt it shake in my chest. His hand froze, only for a second. Then it moved again. I didn't say anything, didn't shift, didn't stop him, and he didn't ask if I wanted him to. We stayed like that, suspended. His hands still moving, too slow now, too deliberate. My skin tingling under every touch, every pause, every pull of breath between us. There were no words. There didn't need to be. The silence said everything. And just when I thought I might turn around, might meet his eyes, might let whatever this was finally happen, the door creaked. Not loud, just enough. We both turned. And there, in the soft light of the hallway, stood my daughter, half asleep, blanket in her hand, eyes confused. She looked at me, then at him, then back at me. She didn't say anything, just stood there, still, like the whole room had stopped breathing. I pulled my robe tighter, swallowed hard, but the damage was already done. Nothing happened. Not technically, but everything had changed. Everything. The next morning, Jordan was gone. Not gone from the house. Just gone from me. He didn't say good morning. Didn't make coffee like he usually did. Didn't linger in the doorway or ask if I needed anything. He moved differently. Quicker. Colder. Eyes always somewhere else. And I pretended not to notice. But I noticed everything. My husband came back 2 days later. Same brief kiss on the cheek. Same suitcase by the door. Same questions about bills and dinner and laundry. But I wasn't the same. And neither was the house. There was a quiet between us that I didn't know how to fill. Not just with him. With everyone. Even my daughter. She started acting out. Nothing wild. Just small things. Snapping at her brother. Not finishing her lunch. Drawing pictures with people who had no faces. One night, I found her sitting at the top of the stairs, staring at nothing. I asked her what was wrong. She just said, "Nothing feels the same anymore." And I knew. Maybe she saw more than I thought. Or maybe she didn't have to see anything. Maybe she just felt the shift in the air the way children do. Like animals before a storm. I kept trying to act normal. Kept cleaning the house, making meals, playing my role. But every time Jordan walked past me in the hallway, every time he avoided my eyes, it felt like a weight pressing harder on my chest. I couldn't stand it anymore. So one night, when everyone else was asleep, I knocked on his door. He opened it slowly, didn't speak, didn't move to let me in. So I stayed in the hallway, under that flickering hallway bulb, and I asked him the only question that had been living inside me since that night. "Did you mean to?" His eyes dropped to the floor. His jaw clenched. And then he whispered, barely, "I'm sorry." I don't know what I was thinking. And that was it. Not a confession. Not a denial. Just a boy who had stepped too close to a fire and didn't know how to speak through the burn. I started avoiding mirrors. Not because I couldn't face what I looked like, but because I couldn't face what I'd become. I'd walk past them without turning my head. I'd get dressed in the dimmest corner of the room. I stopped putting on mascara. Stopped caring how I looked, because for a moment, I cared too much. And now I didn't know who I was trying to be anymore. Bedtime became the hardest part. The quiet, the weight of the sheets, the sound of my husband breathing beside me, not touching me, not noticing the space between us had grown into something vast. He didn't ask if I was okay. He never asked. He assumed, I guess, that if I was feeding the kids, folding the laundry, showing up to life, then everything must be fine. But I wasn't fine, and I didn't know if I wanted him to see it, or if I was scared he finally would. Some nights, I'd lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it happened. Wondering if I invited it in, if I created the space, or if the space was already there, and I just stopped pretending it didn't exist. I thought I was the adult, the protector, the one who was supposed to set the boundaries, hold the line, keep everyone safe. But I was also the wounded. And wounded people don't always choose wisely. They just reach for whatever stops the bleeding. I told myself it was just emotional, that nothing really happened, that I stopped it before it could go too far. But even that began to sound hollow, because something did happen. Maybe not in the way people would understand, but in the way it lived in my chest, twisting and growing and demanding to be felt. Was it a one-sided thing? Was I the only one who felt that current? Or did he feel it too and not know what to do with it? Did I manipulate him? Or did we both stumble into something neither of us were prepared for? I keep circling back to that moment. His hands, my silence, that long pause before the door opened. And I wonder, if the door hadn't creaked, if my daughter hadn't woken up, would I have let it go further? Would he? Would we have said it was a mistake afterward, or would we have said nothing at all? I don't have the answers. All I know is, I used to think the worst betrayals were loud, messy, obvious. But sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones buried in glances and held breath, are the ones that never stop echoing. Have you ever crossed a line not because you were cruel, not because you didn't know better, but because you were empty? Because something inside you had been so quiet for so long, you forgot what it felt like to be heard, to be seen, to be touched with care, not obligation. Would you have stopped it? Or would you have let it happen just to feel something real? I don't have the moral clarity I used to. I used to think I was strong, disciplined, untouchable. But now, I just feel human, flawed, lonely in places I never even noticed before. So I'll ask you if you've ever felt that ache, the one you can't name. Drop your truth in the comments. No judgment. Just release. Even if it's just a sentence. Even if it's just a sigh. We carry too much in silence. And if this story stirred something in you, something soft, something aching, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. The next one might feel even closer to home. Last week, my daughter brought home a drawing from school. She was proud of it, held it up like a treasure. Crayons scribbled across folded paper. Stick figures. Big smiles. I asked her who it was. She pointed. "That's you," she said. "And that's the sad boy with golden hands." I didn't ask what she meant. Didn't correct her. Didn't try to explain it away. I just folded the drawing slowly and tucked it deep inside a drawer I rarely open. Because some moments, they don't scream. They whisper. Softly. Every time the house gets quiet again. Until you forget what silence used to sound like. And if I ever get the chance to be touched again, really touched, I hope it's by love, not by loneliness. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, not for drama, but for the truths we never say out loud.